The rain does not fall, it murmurs. It drips from the high leaves like a slow unraveling, sliding down bark slick with moss, down the curved backs of stone serpents who have waited centuries for this moment. In the clearing, where the jungle seems to hold its breath, a single flame dances. A torch, wedged into a crack in the temple's base, sputters in defiance of the damp, its light curling over the weathered surface of a stela, a monolith etched with the memories of kings. He kneels before it, the priest, barefoot, skin dusted with crushed cinnabar, the sacred red of life and blood. His robes cling to his body, heavy with mist, the hem dark with soil. His lips move without sound at first, as though coaxing forgotten words back into the world. Then, softly, they begin to shape the prayer. Not in a tongue we know, but in the syllables of maize and river, fire and moon, the language of the gods who carved time itself. Around him, the jungle sways, watching. A bird shrieks once in the canopy, then falls silent. The smell of copal drifts upward, sweet and pungent, twining with the torch smoke in a dance of grief. The gods must be fed, even when they sleep. Even when the world forgets their names. The stela he prays to is crumbling. The faces etched into its stone are soft now, their brows worn down by rain, their eyes half-lidded as if exhausted from being remembered. 1,000 years ago, these stones were clean and bright, colored with crushed jade and hematite, draped in garlands. Now, moss curls into their mouths like vines reclaiming a lie. The priest knows the stories behind these faces. He was taught them as a boy, when he was fed corn mash by firelight and told that kings were stars and flesh, that every act of sacrifice sent light to the heavens. He believed it. He had to. Belief was the root that bound this world to the next. And now, belief is all he has left. Behind him, the court waits in silence. Nobles seated on carved stone benches, cloaked in jaguar pelts and silence. Their fingers tap nervously on their thigh bones, the rhythm of impatience disguised as ceremony. They are the sons and daughters of lords, of long-dead generals who conquered with obsidian clubs and named their sons after storms. But the storms no longer answer. The cenotes are low. The crops are thin. And the stars, the sacred stars, have begun to shift from their proper courses. A bowl sits beside the priest. In it, offerings, cacao beans, feathers, crushed petals, and the bone of a hummingbird. Symbolic things. Safe things. But they will not be enough. The gods hunger. Not for symbols, but for heat. For pain. For truth. He lifts his eyes and sees the smoke rise. It bends east, toward the ruins of the last city that fell, where the temples were swallowed by vines, where the drums ceased, where no voice has been heard in a generation. He has seen it. He went there once, alone, as part of his vision quest. Walked for 3 days without water until the trees parted and he stood in the bones of a city that once raised pyramids to the sun. There, the silence was thick as oil. Even the insects were gone. Now, in this clearing, he hears that silence again, beneath the rain, beneath the whisper of palm fronds, beneath the breath of the nobles. The kind of silence that signals a turning. An ending. He speaks louder now, summoning the name of Itzamna, the first light, the old creator. Then Kukulkan, the feathered one, the wind between worlds. Then Nine Chel, mother of medicine and death, who weeps for children not yet born. Each name is a thread, and he weaves them together into a net to catch time, to slow it, to beg it for mercy. Behind the stela, the temple rises, a staircase worn to a slope, flanked by masks of gods with gaping mouths. Once, they swallowed the sun and returned it. Now they gape blindly, chipped and stained, their teeth broken by the weight of centuries. The priest places his hand on the base of the stela. It is cold. Slick with lichen. He presses his forehead to it, whispering now, a secret prayer for things not written in the codices. Not for victory. Not for glory. But for remembering. For the names not yet lost. He sees her face, his mother's, the way she bent over maize, whispering to it as she ground it. The way her hands moved through smoke like dancers. She died in the last drought. Not from hunger, but from what hunger does to a soul. He buried her with no words. Only a shard of jade in her mouth. A symbol, yes. But not enough. The wind shifts. The torch guttering, the rain slowing. Something in the air changes. Not quite a voice, but a presence. The way animals go still before a quake. He feels it in his teeth. He stands, slowly. Knees stiff, robes soaked. His voice now lifts like the smoke, trembles, then steadies. This is not a prayer. This is a plea. The final syllables fall from his lips like ash. Chan Ta'an, he says. Hear me. Not as a priest. Not as a man. But as a fragment of all that was. A hush follows. Even the rain waits. From behind, a footstep. Light. Then another. A girl, no older than 10, barefoot, holding a bowl of burning herbs. She walks past the nobles, unchallenged. Past the guards, unbothered. She kneels beside the priest and holds the bowl up to the stela. He looks at her, not surprised. As if he has seen her in dream or omen. Her eyes are dark, wide, ancient. The smoke rises from her bowl in tight spirals, sharper than his. The gods speak through children, the elders once said. Before the cities grew fat with war and trade. He nods to her. She nods back. And in that moment, something unseen passes between them. Not understanding. Not even hope. But continuity. The knowing that one voice becomes another. That if he is forgotten, she may still remember. The nobles stir. Somewhere in the distance, a drum begins, soft, hollow. Ritual, or warning, it's hard to tell. The priest turns back to the stela, his voice a whisper again. Not a chant now, but a story. A beginning. Once, he says, there was a people who sang to the stars, who mapped time in spirals, who believed that to speak a name was to keep it alive. And though their cities fell, and their kings crumbled into myths, the names, floated on the smoke. He presses his palm flat to the stone, leaves a smear of red pigment. A print. A sign. A final verse. And then he steps back. The girl places her bowl where his hand was. The smoke curls higher. Overhead, thunder rumbles, not loud, but close. The kind of sound that comes not from the sky, but from deep inside the earth. The jungle does not move. He lowers his head. Let it be enough. Let this memory be heard. Let the next voice rise. Dawn arrives not in silence, but in whispers. Mist creeps through the trees, pale and cold, as if the sky has lost the strength to weep. Beneath the tangled canopy of the jungle, where the roots crawl like veins across stone, the city of Copan exhales. Its temples, once crowned with colored banners, now sit veiled in moss and fatigue. Nothing moves, save for the breath of damp earth rising from the cracks. In the far corner of the plaza, under a faded awning woven from reed and bird skin, a scribe sharpens his quill. The tool is bone, carved from the femur of a deer sacrificed under the blood moon. Its tip must be perfect, honed not just for letters, but for memory. He holds it up to the faint light, nods once, and lowers it toward the stone. The slab in front of him is smooth as river glass, untouched, sacred, waiting. The first glyph is hesitant, then steady. A serpent's spine, curling into itself. He breathes out slowly, careful not to smudge the black ink, thick with soot and honey. Every stroke is a promise to time. He writes not for himself, but for the gods who speak through stone. For kings who believe they are carved into the future. For the ancestors who demanded stories survive fire and rot. He is no priest. No warrior. Just a man with ink-stained fingers, a low stool, and a memory of what was once beautiful. The pigments beside him glowed dully in their bowls, indigo crushed from shell and ash, ochre scraped from cliffside, red made from cochineal beetles. Their smell clings to the air, acrid, alive, intimate. Each color has a purpose. Blue for the heavens, black for death, red for rebirth. To place the wrong color in a name is to curse it. Behind him, the court is stirring. A nobleman coughs, dry, harsh, the sound of a throat parched from too many ceremonies. Somewhere closer, a child cries. Then stops. Then nothing. He dips his quill again and writes the date. A day of omen. The jaguar's sun, coiled with drought. The winds have shifted in the calendar, and the priesthood murmurs of imbalance. He has heard their fears whispered behind stone walls, in the flicker of torchlight. Some say the stars are moving against them. Others say the gods are gone. He does not believe they are gone. Only listening more carefully. He pauses, lets the ink settle. The stone is cold beneath his fingers, and the weight of the day leans heavy on his spine. His mat is thin, worn from years of sitting. His knees ache, his back tight. But still, he writes. A shadow passes at the edge of his vision. A girl, barefoot, thin as a reed, carrying a basket wrapped in palm leaves. She walks with her head down, eyes cast to the ground, not noticing him. No one ever does. To them, he is just part of the stone. But he sees her. Her face reminds him of someone. His sister, perhaps. Or a dream of her. She vanished last spring, when the fever came with the yellow winds. They buried her with a dried blossom under her tongue, but no name. There was no time to write it. He should have carved her name. Should have stolen a scrap of stone and etched it deep. But grief dulls even the sharpest tools. He looks back at the glyphs. The next word rises, Tiyun, the stone, the foundation. He pauses. It feels like a question now. What do we build when everything is falling? A lizard darts across the stone. A breeze stirs the hanging leaves. And in that moment, something shifts. He sees not the king's name, not the war tribute, not the ceremony, but something else. A pattern behind the symbols. A rhythm older than the city. His hand moves without thought. He writes faster, not sloppily, but with urgency. The glyphs unfold like a song, one note revealing the next. And suddenly, he is no longer writing for the court. He is writing for what may come after. He imagines someone, centuries from now, brushing away dust from this slab. A hand trembling over these same glyphs, wondering who made them. He imagines their breath catching as they recognize the symbols for storm, sorrow, silence. A record not of greatness, but of endurance. The wind carries a sound now, low drums. Not from the palace, but from the outskirts, near the forest edge. He stiffens. It is not a festival day. The drums are slow, hollow, measured. The rhythm of mourning. Or of war. He closes his eyes. Feels the ink drying on his fingertips. A priest once told him that time is not a road but a circle, that every age returns, dressed in new names but carrying the same sorrow. Hunger, fear, betrayal, love, always the same bones beneath the skin. He looks up. The sky is pale now, streaked with faint smoke from cooking fires. The scent of roasted squash, chili, and charcoal drifts faintly through the air. A hunger stirs in his belly, but he ignores it. Hunger is not new. It is a companion. He hears footsteps, boots on stone. The clatter of a ceremonial staff. A court official, wide-shouldered and unsmiling, stops beside him. The king wants the prophecy recorded before nightfall, he says. The scribe nods, not looking up. He does not say what he is truly writing. Not the prophecy. Not anymore. The man leaves, and the silence returns. He dips the quill again. The ink has thickened slightly in the heat, but he doesn't thin it. He wants the glyphs bold. He wants the stone to hold their weight. Today's glyph is a storm, 3 dots above a serpent's eye. It is a symbol of divine unrest. A warning. The last time it appeared, 3 cities burned. The rivers flooded. A ruler drowned himself in the cenote to appease the gods. He draws it slowly. Carefully. It is not fear that guides him now, but honesty. If no one remembers them, if no one records the fall, then what was the rise for? He will not let this age vanish into silence. He will give it shape, texture, breath. He adds a final mark, a small crescent beneath the storm. Not part of the court's order. A scribe's signature, subtle and hidden, a thread of self woven into the fabric of empire. Then, gently, he sets the quill down. A wind stirs the pigments. The red bowl tips slightly, spilling a trace of dust onto the glyphs. He brushes it away with his sleeve. His fingers are shaking. But his work is done, for now. He looks up at the sky once more. The mist has lifted. The sun, pale and cautious, peers through the canopy. The city wakes, but softly. There is no laughter. No clamor. Just the long breath of a civilization in quiet decline. He gathers the remaining pigment, folds the cloth over his tools, and stands. His joints pop like dry wood. He does not know if he will write again tomorrow. Or if the slab will still be here. War is close. The drums say so. But as he walks away from the stone, he does not look back. Because he knows he has left something behind. A record. A rhythm. A voice in the silence. And beneath the slab, beneath the glyphs, beneath the stone itself, the earth holds it all. Waiting. And somewhere far above, the stars shift once more. Preparing to be watched again. And as the city breathes in the scent of its own future, a child watches from the market edge, fingers wrapped around a bone flute she does not yet know how to play. The boy's fingers tremble against the bone flute, though the air is still and the stone beneath him warm from the dying sun. He crouches in shadow, pressed against a cracked pillar whose carved jaguar face has long since lost its snarl. The plaza before him stretches wide and empty, its mosaic stones worn smooth by centuries of dancing feet, of spilled blood, of the weight of kings. But there are no kings now. Only whispers. Only waiting. Above, the sky burns orange and violet, a fire not of flame, but of farewell. The temple of the warriors looms like a ghost, its steps chipped and slick from rain, its columns leaning as if weary of memory. On each column, the figures of past conquerors stand frozen mid-step, their arms raised in triumph or invocation. They once told stories of glory. Now, they lean like tombstones. The boy grips the flute tighter. It is carved from the wing bone of a heron, light and pale, wrapped at the end with a strip of woven bark. It was his brother's. Too large for his hands, too long for his breath, but it is all he has left. His father told him to wait here, near the pillar, near the gods, and that he would return before the shadows reached the cenote. But the sun has long since fallen behind the trees, and the shadows now stretch like claws across the plaza. Still, he waits. From somewhere deeper in the city, the drums begin. Low. Steady. No rhythm of celebration, no dance of rain or harvest. These are the drums of war, or worse, the drums of fear. The sound creeps through the air like smoke, curling into the space behind the boy's ribs, tightening with every beat. He presses the flute to his lips. A single note escapes. Crooked. Fragile. Like a bird with a broken wing. He tries again, breath uneven. The sound wavers and dies. He isn't playing for beauty. He is playing so the silence doesn't eat him. The silence here is not empty, it is thick, alive. It presses in from all sides, whispering with the voices of those who stood here before. The dancers. The priests. The captives with painted hands and eyes that never looked down. He knows their names only through songs his mother sang while kneading maize, half prayers in the cadence of her work. She is gone now, buried with a sliver of obsidian in her mouth and her braids still woven. He does not remember what she smelled like. Only that she always sang the same lullaby when it rained. And now the air smells like stone dust and old fire, and he has forgotten the melody. A woman passes near the edge of the plaza. She walks with a jug balanced on her shoulder, wrapped in cloth, her feet silent against the stone. Her hair is dark, her eyes kohl-ringed, her necklaces of greenstone clicking softly as she moves. She does not look at him. No one ever looks at him. Not the nobles. Not the market women. Not even the temple guards. He is not heir. Not apprentice. Not sacrifice. Only a boy in a city unraveling. Far across the courtyard, smoke rises in thin lines from the palace kitchens. The scent of roasted squash and chili drifts faintly through the thickening dusk, but there are fewer fires than there once were. The festivals have grown smaller. The feasts simpler. The last of the dancers have fled into the forest, or been taken by fever. The gods are still praised, but the prayers now sound more like apologies. He places the flute in his lap, listening. A dog barks. Then nothing. In the center of the plaza, the sacred cenote glimmers with dull light, a circle of water carved by hands that are now dust, its edge lined with offerings. Bone. Gold. Flowers. Hair. Once, it was a place of voices, chants echoing across the water as the priests cast gifts into the depths. Now it yawns open like a mouth waiting for a name. The boy knows what lies beneath it. He once peeked over the edge when no one watched, saw the glint of jade in the dark. Saw the shape of a child's skull cradled in roots. The gods are fed with things that do not float. He closes his eyes. What did they hope to keep by giving so much? He remembers the last time he saw his brother, strong, loud, always laughing with a cracked tooth and red-threaded sash. He ran into the jungle with others when the fever came. Only for a few days, he said, just until it passes. They never returned. Only the flute came back, tied in a bundle of leaves left at their door. A gift. A warning. No one said. The drums grow louder now. Not fast. Still slow. But heavier. The kind of rhythm that marks the gathering of power, of decisions being made behind curtains, of kings choosing which names to remember and which to erase. He watches as a figure steps onto the top of the temple. A priest, cloaked in red and black, arms outstretched. Smoke trails from the bowl in his hands, thick with burning copal. The scent cuts through the air like a blade, sweet and sour and old. The priest does not speak. He does not need to. The city already knows what he carries. There are omens in the valley. The river has turned bitter. The skies no longer align with the glyphs. The scribes are rewriting the calendar to fit the chaos, and the people are running out of words. The boy watches him for a long time. Then he stands. The flute hangs from his fingers like a question. He walks slowly to the edge of the plaza, stepping where dancers once spun, where kings once bled the sky into the earth. His feet are bare. The stone is warm still, but fading. Like a memory. Like a name whispered once and never again. He does not know where he is going. Only that waiting here is another kind of death. He walks past the marketplace, past the empty stalls with bowls of shriveled limes and feathers caught in cracked baskets. Past the crumbling gate where vines twist through carvings of serpents and fire. Past the field where maize once grew so tall it touched the gods. He walks toward the jungle. Not to escape. But to carry something with him. A breath. A song. A memory. A name. He will sleep beneath the ceiba tree, where the roots stretch down into the underworld and the branches brush the sky. He will play the flute there, even if the sound is broken. Because someone must sing, even when the music is gone. Behind him, the city hums low with the weight of what it cannot say. And in the east, beyond the hills, a new silence begins to stir. And deep within the temple's shadow, a girl traces a glyph into clay, the symbol for lost, drawn with a trembling hand. A knife clatters to the floor. Not silver. Not ceremonial. Just iron, crude and blackened, still wet with the breath of the one who held it. It lands blade first in the dirt beside a splintered stool, quivering, then still. Outside, wind howls through the rafters of the longhouse, lifting the corners of fur draped across the beams, tugging at the shadows. A pale, flickering light seeps through the cracked slats of the shutters, torchlight, but not the safe kind. It dances like a warning. And the girl kneels over the threshold, barefoot, palms bloody, her breath shallow. Not from running, but from choosing not to. She could have run. Could have slipped into the night like so many others did when the horn blew from the watchtower, low and long, the signal of betrayal. But she stayed. She stayed because the fire in her chest burned hotter than the fear. Her name is Alfrun. Daughter of no one. Sister to no god. The child born of mud and hunger when the river failed, when the wheat turned black and the sky bled sleet. She was never meant to stand here, at the mouth of the chieftain's hall, while the wind carried voices of revolt through the valley. But tonight, old bloodlines die screaming, and new ones are carved with teeth. A howl cuts through the wind, not a wolf, not tonight, and behind her, the door groans as it swings open wider. Cold air pours inside, lifting the smoke from the fire pit in a column of twisting, ash-stained light. The hearth is dying. Embers spit and glow, but give no warmth. The elders are gone. Their seats stand empty, cloaks still hanging, cups still full. And Alfrun, shaking, rises to her feet. The knife waits in the dust. No one told her what to do next. No one ever does. From beyond the longhouse, boots crash against frozen ground. Not one pair. Dozens. Men coming down from the high cliffs where oaths were broken. Where a lord once cut his palm and said the land would hold his secrets, then sold it anyway for Flemish gold and a title that meant nothing in the snow. The boots march without mercy. They do not come to talk. They come to finish what was started. She lifts the knife. It is heavier than it looks. Or maybe her arms are just tired. Her breath comes in sharp pulls, chest tight from the smoke. Her hair is slick with sweat and soot. Her cheek burns where the ash settled, soft as snow at first, then hotter. Somewhere beyond the hill, someone screams. Then another. It is beginning. She steps over the threshold, past the sagging lintel where her father used to carve notches after every harvest. None were added in the last 3 years. The wood is cracked, blistered with mold. Rain found its way in long ago, and never left. And then the ground beneath her vibrates, subtly, like the tremor before a landslide, or the heartbeat before a confession. The first torch is visible now. Then two. Then a line of them, winding down the trail like a fiery serpent. Shadows spill between the trees. Armor clinks in the frost-bitten dark. They wear the king's colors, but this king has no face, no voice. Only tacksmen and swords. He has never touched this soil. Never buried a son in it. Never watched the frost take calves in May or the wolves circle the grain store in June. His power is minted, not earned. And yet it crushes. Alfrun's village was once a song. A place of goats and bone flutes and salted fish. Where the dead were laid in boats with their boots on and eyes painted black to see into the other world. Now, it is a wound wrapped in fog. She doesn't flee. She walks, slowly, past the stone shrine to Fry where offerings used to rest, a half-eaten apple, a twist of wool, a coin that once came from far-off Rus. Now, only cobwebs and mice. The gods have gone quiet. Or maybe the people just stopped listening. She pauses beside the old well. The rope is gone. The bucket lies cracked beneath the rim, half covered in last year's snowmelt. Her brother fell in once, chasing a beetle. She pulled him out by his hair and slapped him for crying. He never cried again. He died 2 winters ago, spine twisted by plague. Buried without rites. Just a cairn of loose stones and the rusted knife he carried since boyhood. The torches draw closer. Alfrun turns. She sees her people, not many now, gathered along the ridge, faces hollowed by months of quiet famine. Some hold blades. Others just hold each other. None speak. There is nothing left to say. They knew this day would come. Knew the price for resisting the Lord's envoy, for sending his men back with empty hands and bloodied lips. This is not a defense. It is a farewell. And still, she walks. Into the center of the village, where the carved pole still stands. Weathered, split, almost swallowed by lichen, but upright. On it, the stories of the people spiral upward in crude relief, the first hearth fire, the marriage of the hunter to the sea daughter, the battle of ash and wind. No one remembers all the tales now. But the pole remembers. She reaches it. And with trembling fingers, she drives the blade into its base. A small act. Pointless, perhaps. But hers. A mark of defiance the king's scribes won't record. A cut the fire won't burn away. Behind her, a voice rises. Old and cracked. An elder, Halda, the weaver, still strong in her bones, her white hair wild with the wind. She begins to hum. Not a song of sorrow. A song of names. Names of the ones who came before. Of mothers who fed 9 with 1 pot. Of sons who died on sea ice. Of daughters who wove banners while carrying iron in their bellies. Names the storm cannot steal. Others join her. Voices rise like smoke. Thin at first. Then bold. And the king's men, arriving at the edge of firelight, hesitate. Just for a breath. They expected silence. They found memory. They expected surrender. They found a name they could not erase. Alfrun closes her eyes. The wind presses its cold mouth against her throat, and the drums of war beat somewhere far behind the trees. But in her chest, a new rhythm forms. A pulse. A promise. This will not be the end. Not of the song. Not of the story. Only a chapter. And when the fire comes, and it will, she will not kneel. She will not beg. She will walk into the smoke carrying her brother's name in her blood and her people's sorrow in her breath. And if her body falls, so be it. The flame cannot burn memory. And far across the sea, where winter hasn't yet devoured the land, a messenger will whisper her tale to another fire. And that fire will burn a little brighter. And in a distant forest clearing, as snowflakes fall in silence, a carved stone is lifted upright by shaking hands, a new pole, bare and waiting, ready to remember. A raven lands on the gallows. Its claws scratch the wet beam, tapping like fingers on bone. Rain clings to its wings, its beak cracked and black, its eyes gleaming like old coins buried too long. The noose swings beside it, empty, but not forgotten. Below, the mud churns with hoofprints and blood. The square is silent now. No crowd. No drums. No priest. Only echoes, echoing long after the last breath was stolen. The pyre smolders. The smoke crawls sideways through the air, thick with the scent of burning cloth, wet ash, and something deeper, something human. And beneath that, the faintest trace of rosemary. Not from pity. From memory. Because she wore it in her hair. The girl they called Eileen. She did not beg. She did not cry. She only looked upward, at the sky through the scaffolding, as if the storm would part for her, just once, to let her see the sun before she was taken. But the sky stayed iron. And the sentence was carried out. Not for murder. Not for theft. For remembering too well, and refusing to lie. They called her a heretic. A speaker of forbidden names. A vessel of unclean spirits. But the children called her Light-Fingered Eileen. Because wherever she went, things changed. Doors opened. Locks gave way. Candles flared back to life, even when the wind should have killed them. They whispered that she had the old words. Not Latin. Not the tongue of courts. But the ones carved in antler, buried in peat, sung beneath standing stones long before churches rose. And that terrified them more than any blade. Because words live longer than kings. She came from the salt coast, from a crooked fishing village where widows outnumbered husbands and the wind was sharper than steel. Her mother was a healer, her father a drowned name. And when the bishop's men came to the coast and demanded loyalty, she did not kneel. She fed them broth and watched. And when they returned with fire and relics, she did not run. She stayed. Some say she swallowed the ashes of her home, just to carry it forward. Others say she never existed. But the rope marks on the beam are real. So is the nail driven into the stone, where someone, perhaps a child, perhaps a coward, left a small token, a carved bird, wings outstretched, eyes closed. Its feet tied with twine. Below it, a single word scratched in crude lines. Return. Eileen never promised salvation. She only reminded them of what they'd lost. Of the gods that once walked barefoot through the heather. Of the forest paths that were not just paths, but veins of an older body. Of silence that spoke, if you were brave enough to listen. But silence doesn't serve the crown. And in this new order, there was no room for what could not be taxed or nailed to doctrine. So the inquisitors came, not with questions, but with iron. They found her kneeling beside a sick child, placing a poultice made of mold and pine over his chest. She looked up and said, calmly, "You are too late." They thought she meant the boy. But it was them. Still, they dragged her, barefoot, across the cobblestones, past shrines she would not look at, through doors built by men who had forgotten they once worshipped fire. They tried to make her confess. They used cold. Hunger. Sleep turned against her. She answered only with a song. One no one recognized, except the old woman who swept the prison floor. She wept, silently, for hours. The song was from before her own mother was born. And that was the problem. Eileen was not dangerous because of what she did. She was dangerous because of what she remembered. Because she stood as proof that there were other ways to know the world. That not all wisdom wore robes or rang bells. That the earth could be holy without being owned. On the day of her execution, it rained. The bishop, flanked by guards in polished mail, read from a scroll. His voice cracked, soaked with wine and fear. But Eileen looked only at the crowd. And smiled, not with defiance. With sorrow. As if she were the last tree in a forest, watching the axes fall and knowing none of the men would live long enough to plant another. She said nothing as they placed the noose. Only closed her eyes. And whispered a word that no one heard. But the raven did. It screeched, once, sharp and piercing, as if echoing a vow. And then, it flew. Now the wind speaks of her. Not in voices. In signs. A sprig of heather growing through a crack in the gallows. Moss blooming out of season. A priest struck blind after burning a field. The river rising when it should fall. And always, the bird. Circling. Watching. Waiting. Not for vengeance. Not exactly. For memory. Because they can hang the girl. But they cannot hang the word. And across the hills, in a place where the trees are older than names, another fire is lit. A girl, younger, hungrier, stirs the coals with a stick carved with signs. She wears no shoes. Her lips are cracked from chanting. She is learning. Not from books. From wind. From bones. From the way the wolves hesitate before crossing a certain line of stones. Eileen's name is never spoken. But it does not need to be. It lives in the way this girl ties her braids with thread soaked in moonwater. In how she hums while grinding roots. In how she waits for the rain before she buries her offerings. The next chapter will not begin with a trial. It will begin in silence. In damp leaves. In a dream passed from hand to hand, until it is no longer dream but memory. Until the rope rots. Until the gallows collapse. Until the raven lays its head down, not to watch, but to sleep. A hound begins to howl in the dark. Not in hunger. Not in pain. In warning. Its voice rolls down the valley like thunder in chains, echoing through pine and stone, waking men who do not know why they tremble. Firelight flickers in hall windows. Mothers clutch children close. Old warriors reach, instinctively, for blades they buried years ago. Something is wrong. But nothing moves on the road. Not yet. Then, the wind shifts, and with it comes the scent. Not rot. Not plague. Ash. A long breath of it. Bitter. Familiar. The kind left after something ancient burns. They say it started in the east, in lands once ruled by oaths older than crowns. Smoke thick as wool rolling from monasteries, from shrines, from libraries lined with vellum and ink drawn from oak and blood. The flames did not ask who prayed there. They only fed. By morning, 6 abbeys were gone. By nightfall, 12. The king's messengers were slow. His armies slower. But fire travels faster than horses. And behind it came men. Not like raiders. Not like lords. Something in between. They wore no sigils. Spoke no banners. Their mail was mismatched, their faces smeared with pitch to hide names and pasts. But their hands knew war. They called themselves the Ascend. And where they passed, nothing stood. Not just towns. Not just crops. Memory. They erased memory. They drowned the old names, toppled the stones carved with spirals, shattered the harps, broke the looms passed down through 5 generations. They left no bodies unburned. No faces unburied. Only silence. But silence, too, speaks. And far from the ashes, in a forgotten wood near a forgotten village, an elder stirs. She is blind in one eye, hunched with winters, her spine twisted like the roots of the tree she leans against. Her hut leans with her, half-rotten, moss-grown, held together more by habit than timber. She smells the smoke before it arrives. Not from a hearth. From history. She kneels before a bowl of water darkened with elder bark and whispers names. Not prayers, remembrances. There is no one left to answer prayers. But the water trembles. The boy beside her flinches. He is her last student. Not yet 10. Not yet hardened. But he does not look away. He sees what she sees, though she never told him how. A road. A pyre. A man bound and laughing before the flames take him. A scroll burned and the ink rising like ghosts into the air. A sword dropped into a well, never drawn again. Visions like storms. Sudden. Unyielding. The boy asks, will they come here? She does not answer. Instead, she reaches into the coals and pulls free a small charm, bone wrapped in nettle cord, scorched black at the tips. She places it around his neck. Her hands do not shake. Run west, she says. When the crows rise. He nods. And waits. Because in the old ways, waiting is half the war. Elsewhere, the ashen march. Not with fury. With certainty. They believe what they are doing is cleansing. They speak of order. Of purity. Of one truth to bind them all. And yet, even their leaders fear sleep. For in their dreams, the burned ones walk again. The monks who would not kneel. The midwives drowned in icy rivers. The men who carved stars into cave walls and sang to the moon. These ghosts do not speak. But they follow. Closer, with each passing night. The general, a man once known as Ser Calder the Faithful, has not spoken his birth name in months. He no longer remembers the sound of his wife's voice. He leads through silence, through fear. But he carries one secret still. A pendant. Small. Carved from blackthorn. Hung around his neck, hidden beneath iron. A gift from a woman he burned. His mother. He says her name only once more, when a scout returns, shaking, eyes wide. There's nothing left, the scout whispers. The village, they knew we were coming. But they didn't run. They vanished. Calder frowns. Vanished? The scout nods. No bodies. No blood. Just, symbols. On every wall. On every tree. Carved deep. Fresh. And the general knows. This is not a war they are winning. This is a memory awakening. Because you can burn a book. But not a song already sung into the bones of a mountain. You can silence a name. But not a rhythm already carved into footsteps. The old ways do not die. They sleep. Beneath thresholds. Beneath hearthstones. In lullabies. In lullabies sung by a mother who does not know what she carries in her voice. In the rhythm of a girl braiding her hair in the pattern her grandmother taught her, without knowing it mimics the phases of the moon. In the way a child arranges stones without knowing why. And now, the children are remembering. They speak the names in secret. They gather moss and salt and hang charms beneath the eaves. They place water by the door at dusk. Not out of fear. Out of recognition. And when the ashen reach the edge of the forest, they stop. Not from doubt. From dread. For the trees lean inward. The birds are silent. And the wind carries a scent not of fire, but of return. One soldier steps forward. And the ground opens. Not like a wound. Like a mouth. Swallowing him whole. No scream. Just the sound of breath being taken by the earth. And the rest do not follow. They turn. They call it cursed. They call it witchland. They do not speak of it again. But some never leave it. Some stay. Entranced. As if the forest remembered who they were before they learned to burn. Back in the hut, the elder is gone. The boy remains. He has not run. He waits still. Because the crows have not yet risen. But when they do, they will not rise alone. The next chapter does not begin in fire. It begins in frost. In stillness. In the hush before something ancient returns to speak through the mouths of children. And this time, it will not ask permission.